It started, I would say, in the early 2000s. And my husband and I, we like to travel, but we're not beach people. We're not big on just sitting around a pool. So we started going to, various sporting events, baseball games, college ball games. And 5 or 6 years into our journeys, one of our friends made a joke about us hitting all the major league stadiums. We didn't think anything of it. And then one year I bought my husband a pinup board with a map of all of the major league stadiums. And we started filling in the dots, and then it just became one of those things you had to complete. So I think it probably took us, I would say, just a little over 20 years probably to do it. But we've had a lot of fun doing it.
Welcome. This is Uncommon Sense, a CPA podcast presented by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The center is an initiative of the CPA Education Foundation, the charitable arm of the Chartered Professional Accountant profession in Alberta. For the record, this CPA podcast isn't about bean counting. Our episodes feature conversations with Alberta CPAs sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics. I'm Gordon Turtle, your host for this episode, and our guest today is Chartered Professional Accountant and Financial Educator, Shauna Frederick. Shauna, a CPA and Family Enterprise Advisor, or FEA, is passionate about entrepreneurship, diversity, and advancing the rights of women and girls. Beyond her advisory work, she has held treasury and chair roles in organizations across Canada. She has also co-led a 5-week Girls Leadership program to foster leadership skills in young women. As the co-host of the Finance Cafe podcast, Shauna is reshaping the conversation around finances, empowering women entrepreneurs, and normalizing money talk. Her dedication to diversity, inclusion, and entrepreneurship fuels her impactful work in and beyond the business world. I'm looking forward to learning more about Shauna's work to support women, entrepreneurship, and financial planning for small businesses. Welcome, Shauna.
Gordon, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about my story today.
Fantastic. So to start us off, can you talk a bit about your professional background and why you became a CPA? And you've mentioned you're a fractional CFO, so maybe you can tell me what that is and what led to you moving into that field.
Gordon, this conversation could probably be a podcast of its own. So becoming a chartered professional accountant wasn't a straight path for me. Right? It was a long journey filled with setbacks, failures, and a lot of hard work. But more importantly, it was really a journey shaped by incredible mentors and supporters who believed in me and pushed me forward when I doubted myself. So I would say, just highlights, it started with my accounting teacher in high school, in the 90s, who I was on the verge of becoming a high school dropout, and she really encouraged me. And probably I would credit her for allowing me to find my initial spark for accounting. I did end up being accepted into the U of C, but in my second year, I was kicked out of university. There were many reasons for that, but looking back, I realized that failure does not define us. What we do afterwards does. So it took me 8 years of online learning through Athabasca University, working full-time to finally complete my degree. And really that journey taught me persistence. And one of my greatest mentors, Patty Reynolds, a fellow CPA, who lastly encouraged me to enroll in the CA School of Business. So that's where really the accounting program started. So after working in oil and gas for 10 years, I ended up in public practice, where I met my biggest supporter being Chris Matthews, another CPA. Chris taught me one of the most valuable lessons while working with entrepreneurs, and that was that understanding the person behind the business was so much more important than simply, sharing and showing everything that I know as a CPA. Listening to the client's needs, goals, their objectives, their desires is what truly allows me to help them. So I left public practice in 2016 and started this Frederick OTG to offer part-time CFO services to small and medium-sized businesses that really couldn't, they didn't need a full-time CFO. They couldn't necessarily afford the full-time commitment, but really to support them with strategic financial guidance that aligned to their personal and business goals.
So that's incredible. Such a fascinating story with a lot of lessons in it, around the importance of mentors and how one single teacher in a person's life can make such a big difference. So thanks for sharing that story with us, Shauna.
Yeah, no problem. And that was really, sorry, Gordon, that was really just only the beginning. So I'm excited to share more. So yeah, let's carry on.
Well, excellent. The focus of much of your work right now is in the area of financial wellness, supporting entrepreneurs and navigating their financial challenges. So how do you define financial wellness? And are there standard guidelines you follow when helping clients in this area?
Yeah, Gordon, it's a great question. Really, we look at financial wellness as the overall health of your financial situation, both in business and in life. So for entrepreneurs, financial wellness is more than just making money, right? It's about managing resources efficiently, planning for growth, avoiding debt traps, and having a clear vision for your business's future. So when I work with entrepreneurs, I take this holistic approach. There is no one size fits all for any solution, right? We look at their financial statements, of course, but really often explore their money mindset and their relationship with money. Are they making decisions out of fear? Are they confidently moving towards their goals? So by focusing on these aspects, we can really create a sustainable foundation that supports both their business and personal well-being. And Gordon, I just want to take a moment to sort of talk about the term financial wellness. We're heading into Financial Literacy Month here in Canada. And the reason why I prefer using this term financial wellness is, number one, financial literacy. The opposite itself implies illiterate, where I believe that many people have some financial knowledge. We all have a different base of financial knowledge. So financial literacy just simply focuses really on the basic understanding of financial concepts, where financial wellness really takes into account the emotional, psychological, and practical aspects of managing money. Right, so we can think of two people, both with the same financial knowledge, able to read financial statements, maybe understand a little bit of the concept behind it, but they could experience very different levels of financial wellness. Right? One person might feel confident and in control of their finances, where the other could feel overwhelmed and stressed.
Yeah.
And even though they have that same technical knowledge, right? So financial wellness really addresses this gap and recognizes that there's an emotional and mental health that plays key roles in how people manage their money.
Do you find in your work that entrepreneurs need that kind of support that you provide just when they're starting up or at any stage of their business careers as entrepreneurs?
It's a great question. And at any stage, right? At any stage in our life, we often, need a little bit of support in this matter, because financial wellness isn't just about the profits, right? It's about having control, clarity, and confidence in your financial future, and really knowing that you can handle unexpected challenges and having a plan for achieving both those short-term and long-term goals. And something as simple but as most difficult as the pandemic that we just went through, right? Having that support in there can really play a pivotal role in helping that entrepreneur through that time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You've talked about how a person's mindset and biases about money shape the way they approach financial decisions in business. Can you explain what you mean by that and provide a few examples of what that's all about?
Yeah, you bet. So our mindset, and more importantly, our behaviors around money, really have this profound impact on our overall financial decision-making. Whether we view money as something scarce or abundant, as a source of stress or empowerment, right? These perspectives are going to shape how we approach everything from pricing our services to investing in our growth. So if we take, for example, someone who grew up in a household where money was always tight, right? They might develop this scarcity mindset. This could lead them to undervaluing services, avoiding taking risks, or, hesitating to invest in their business. On the other hand, someone who views money as a tool for growth may be more comfortable making those strategic investments and taking calculated risks. And so for the advisors out there, it's crucial for us really to reflect on even our own money mindset and our own behaviors, because they're going to influence the guidance that we provide. And if we have limiting beliefs about money, we may unintentionally project that onto our clients. So it's important for us to examine not only our own relationship with money, but having the conversations with our clients in order to provide the best support possible.
So the way you worded that is really interesting to me. You mentioned people can see money as a source of stress or as a source of empowerment. Do people develop that kind of approach or attitude toward money as children, or is that something that they develop as adults as they get older?
It's such a great question because we learn it, from as early as in our mother's wombs, right? So many of us can carry this limiting belief about money or self-imposed ideas about what we can or can't do, often rooted in our own experiences from growing up, from seeing how our parents or our caregivers handled money. And the interesting thing is that these beliefs aren't necessarily true, but they can often restrict our potential. And again, as advisors, if we haven't examined our own money mindset, it's hard to help others recognize and shift theirs. So I'll share a personal example.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, growing up, money was really tight in our house. My mom did everything herself, right? So in addition to raising 3 girls, my biological father left us when I was 3. She worked full-time, maintained a vegetable garden, canned a lot of our food, and played plumber or electrician in the house when needed. Right? So this perception became a belief for me that I need to do everything myself to save money. Right? That really became ingrained in me. So as an entrepreneur, I saw this leading to, okay, I need to continue to do everything myself, and could often lead to burnout and missed opportunities if I'm not outsourcing tasks, even when I really need help to help that business grow. So the way that we can overcome this is starting by reframing this belief, right? Outsourcing isn't a waste of money. It's really a strategic investment in our business's success. So me personally, by shifting my mindset, I can focus on these high-impact activities like building client relationships, growing revenue, and doing the things that I really love to do, as opposed to maybe some of the things that I don't.
Well, is it safe to say, or would it be correct to say, you went from a position of seeing money as stress to you moved from there to seeing money as a source of empowerment? Or is that too simplistic?
I think it might be a little too simplistic, and I'm probably still partway there. So there's still a lot of challenges that I go through. Overcoming this belief that there's good debt versus bad debt is another common pitfall that many entrepreneurs and individuals can have. My perception growing up was that debt caused stress. And I would think that because I would see my mom, balancing the checkbook and managing the bills. And it looked to me, my perception as, 5-year-old Shauna was that this was really challenging, and I didn't want to go down that road. So I remember that when I bought my first house in Calgary, I walked out of the bank and I thought I was going to throw up. It was this significant stress factor for me and it took me a long time to realize that no, this was an investment. This was going to be okay. But I did everything that I could to pay down that debt. So that's something that I'm still working on. In that there is good debt, and debt is something that we have to do to grow, whether it's personally or within our business. So again, these childhood perceptions and beliefs around money can influence our decisions. And so taking it from that scarcity mindset or that stress to empowerment, I'm still working on it.
Well, you mentioned that in order to do your job well, you had to evaluate your own mindset when it comes to money. But it doesn't sound like that's something you can just do and then it's done. It's an ongoing process, I guess, for everyone to continuously evaluate your views on money and realize what might be a myth and what's reality when it comes to money.
It's so true, Gordon. And I think as we go through different challenges, whether it's in our individual lives or in our business, running a business, right? Businesses face a lot of challenge. You can lose a major customer. You can lose a key employee, a key account. So it's really understanding that. And that's where it goes back to this financial wellness piece, making sure that I have clarity, control, and an understanding of what's happening now and into the future, so that if there's a potential roadblock, I can press the pause button and have a look at, the tools that I have in place, bring in my key advisors because we can't possibly do this alone, and really think about, okay, what's my mind going to right now? Is it going back to 3-year-old Shauna worried about, whether or not there's going to be food on the table, or I know that there's a safety net in place and making sure that I have that. So it's important that we're talking about it, right? And it's normalizing these conversations around money, especially for women, Gordon, because there was a Manulife study done a few years ago. 61% of women would rather talk about their own death than money. So how can we possibly be running our businesses if we have this fear of talking about money?
Well, I want to come back to that topic of women and money in a moment, but I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the pandemic and the impact that had on businesses and so on. Has that, in what you've seen since the pandemic sort of ended, I don't know if it's completely over yet, but has that changed the kind of the landscape for business owners in terms of their confidence around money and their confidence in their own business? Has there been kind of lasting damage psychologically or when it comes to businesses and finance because of the pandemic?
That's a great question, and I haven't done any particular studies on it. I am not a therapist. Let's just put that out there. I'm an accountant, but I would say that 100% there would be for many individuals. I mean, for some individuals, they had to close their business, right?
Yeah.
For others individuals, I mean, they lost their jobs. So this fear factor that could potentially come with that. But then it's coming back to, and again, those self-limiting beliefs that we put upon ourselves that, I think something about myself, so everybody else is thinking it. It's having those conversations internally to say, okay, this isn't reality. I can get past this. This was not something within my control. And here are the tools and the people that I have in order to move forward with this. And if there's anybody out there that would love, just a conversation about, money beliefs and just sort of spitballing some ideas, I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody, virtual or otherwise.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned the Finance Cafe. What is the Finance Cafe and what sorts of services does it provide?
The Finance Cafe. So that was the second part of my journey after starting my fractional CFO service. I had the opportunity to meet my co-founder at the Finance Cafe, Shannon Peston, actually through a cold Twitter message inviting her to lunch. But Shannon's a former business banker. And we created the Finance Cafe as a platform to really support women entrepreneurs with their business financial wellness. So help them feel empowered by the numbers and the stories that they tell. And our goal is to take the mystery out of the numbers. So we blend financial education, both online and in person, open conversations through our Finance Cafe podcast, and community building on social media to really transform how women entrepreneurs are engaging with money. I mentioned that 61% of women would rather talk about death than money. Our holistic approach at the Finance Cafe is really trying to equip women with the business, financial knowledge and tools that they need, while fostering that supportive space where they can openly share, learn, and grow. And so by combining this education, understanding of our money behaviors, community support, we really aim to empower women to align their personal and business goals, making financial wellness accessible and overall achievable for anyone.
Are you finding that there are more and more women interested in entrepreneurship as the Finance Cafe evolves and moves forward?
Absolutely. We've had over 1,000 women go through our program since we started the beginning of the pandemic. And we know that the pandemic led a lot of women into entrepreneurship as a means to support their family.
Oh, really?
But yeah, there was the State of Entrepreneurship was recently issued out by the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub out of Toronto, and there's some great stats in there that I can definitely share afterwards. But we're seeing this absolute rise in entrepreneurship for women again as a path to financial independence.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but are most women entrepreneurs in this post-pandemic period looking at setting up a business that they can operate from home as something that kind of evolved during the pandemic, or is it kind of out-of-home work that they're looking at, or both?
It's a combination of both, but most women entrepreneurs, they start off their journey as a side hustle out of their home. And it's trying to grow it from there. And that's where the pandemic led a lot into, okay, this is something that I need to do to sustain my family, to put food on the table. So it's definitely both. But we also know that women entrepreneurs generally run smaller businesses, they generate smaller revenues, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one is access to financial capital.
Right.
We know that access to financial capital for women entrepreneurs is a significant barrier to help grow that business. But yeah, I'm happy to share that the report out of the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, because it provides some really great information for anybody that's interested in information, and I think all of us should be, just on the state of women's entrepreneurship in Canada, and really the impact that supporting women entrepreneurs, I mean entrepreneurs in general, but the impact that supporting women entrepreneurs can have not only in Canada but worldwide.
Yeah, I'd like to see that report. Shauna, I understand you co-host a Finance Cafe podcast. What sorts of topics do you cover on your podcast, and how do you like the experience of being a podcaster?
I think being the host of the podcast is a lot easier than being on the other side of the mic, Gordon. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But no, I mean, I love the conversations that we get to have at the Finance Cafe podcast. So we cover a wide range of topics relating to financial wellness and overall entrepreneurship, and really just this focus on the unique challenges women face in these areas. So we started the podcast a few years after we started the Finance Cafe online learning platform because, again, we were reading these studies time and time again that the financial knowledge and confidence of women business owners was lower. Right? On average, compared to the male counterparts, women would self-assess as having less financial capabilities and confidence than their male counterpart. Stats from the Scotiabank Women's Initiative showed that women business owners were 56% more likely to be ranked as below average in financial knowledge. And it was time to change the story. Change the story and change the narrative that talking about money was okay. So we talk about everything from pricing strategies and cash flow management to money behaviors and overcoming failure. We interview both women entrepreneurs and the experts that support them just to normalize this conversation that it's okay to talk about money. But yeah, the experience that I get talking to entrepreneurs across Canada and into the US and the experts it's been absolutely amazing. I learn something from every conversation, as I'm sure you do, Gordon. But it's just a fantastic way, honestly, to reach this broader audience and share insights that can empower not only women entrepreneurs, but the advisors that support them to really feel more capable, confident in their financial decisions.
Yes, it sounds like a very worthy podcast for sure. And even though it's in your primary audience, your intended audience is women and women considering entrepreneurship, I think it would be of value and interest to men as well to listen to that podcast, to learn about the problems that women face or some of the obstacles as well as the opportunities, and also learn how they can change as men their attitudes and responses to women in business. Would you say that's a fair statement?
100%. And I think the latest stats, I haven't looked at them in a few months, but I think we have a 20% reach to our male audience now. So it's growing. So it is an absolute excellent resource, like I said, for anyone, not just women, but for advisors, for entrepreneurs of all intersecting identities.
Mm-hmm. So you've kind of touched on some obstacles and challenges that women can face as business people or, in other kinds of careers. Are there any other obstacles and challenges that you've become aware of that women as entrepreneurs face that men probably don't?
Yeah, you bet. Another great question. And we know that women entrepreneurs are going to face both external and internal challenges that men might not encounter as frequently. So external, we've talked about the access to funding. So that access to funding is really hindering the growth of women-owned businesses. And internally, there's the challenge of confidence that I just talked about. I mean, women are self-reporting as less financially capable and confident. So this can result in women potentially undervaluing services, struggling with this self-perceived imposter syndrome, which leads to undercharging, hesitating to take on bigger opportunities. And then comes the societal expectations around balancing, business and family life, which adds, added pressure for women entrepreneurs. So in speaking about the State of Women's Entrepreneurship report, women entrepreneurs continue to earn less than men entrepreneurs in Canada. So in 2022, we know that 37.1% of women entrepreneurs, including majority-owned small and medium-sized enterprises and self-employed women, earn less than $50,000 annually, compared to 31.7% of male entrepreneurs, in contrast, right? So 10.9% of women entrepreneurs earned more than $150,000 compared to 14.8% of men entrepreneurs. And women founders, they only receive 4% of venture capital funding in Canada. So when we think about And I mean, I don't want to dwell on access to financial capital, but it's a significant barrier. And when we think about immigrant entrepreneurs, something as what we would perceive as simple as a credit score in Canada, coming into Canada, they don't have credit, they don't have a credit score, they can't get a loan. Right? There is a significant missed opportunity out there for so many immigrant entrepreneurs, both men and women coming into Canada, that can access the funding that they need to start their business, grow their business, and really contribute to the Canadian economy. And, you know, Shannon, my business partner, will always say we don't have a startup problem in Canada, we have a scale-up problem for our entrepreneurs, and that's where the funding comes in.
So what does that mean, startup versus scale-up?
Most women entrepreneurs will bootstrap their startup, so they don't need any funding to start their business. But so they're bootstrapping it with their own personal savings, credit cards.
Oh.
And so once they run out of their startup money, they can't scale their business because they don't have the necessary potential injection of capital in order to really scale up and grow their business.
Okay. Well, I can see where that would be the case if women only have access to, was it 4% of all venture capital? Is that what you said?
4% of venture capital.
Wow.
It's gone up from 2%, but 4% of venture capital. Which is not something to celebrate, Gordon. Come on.
No, that's a pretty sobering figure, that's for sure. Okay, Sean, I don't know if you can even answer this question, but do you have any kind of immediate thoughts on how women can overcome these gender-based obstacles? I know there's not an easy answer to that, but...
I love this question, but I'm going to reframe it because this isn't something women need to overcome alone. It's something that society needs to address and work towards resolving. Right? So gender-based obstacles aren't a woman's problem. They're a societal problem. We need systemic changes that create equal opportunities for all intersecting identities. So I talked about the credit score as, you know, a key determinant of loan approvals. You know, I get it. Credit scores are intended to measure credit worthiness, but they disproportionately hinder women's access to financing. I mean, we talked about, you know, immigrants coming into Canada without a credit score, but even women in Canada, they often have a lower credit score, partly because of systemic issues like the gender pay gap, maternity leave, caregiver responsibilities. So these factors are really reducing the ability to build credit history at the same pace as men, really limiting their options for obtaining financing at a competitive rate. So we can read the headlines, right? We're continuously seeing things like women's entrepreneurship. We work twice as hard for a shot at the rigged game. Women entrepreneurs are over-mentored and underfunded. Financial services, the industry women love to hate. And then the gender pay gap. I think we talked about that, right? The gender pay gap in Canada is a significant issue. On average, women are earning about 12.5% less per hour than men. And this gap is even wider for women from marginalized groups. So, Gordon, honestly, the real change is going to come when society as a whole recognizes the barriers that women face and actively work towards dismantling them, whether through policy changes, better access to capital, or a shift in cultural norms. So what we can do as advisors is actively support, educate, and advocate for women entrepreneurs. So we can help them overcome some of those gender-based barriers that hinder growth and success. So something as simple, just as simple as navigating the subtle gender biases they may experience when dealing with financial institutions. So I am a chartered professional accountant. 4 years ago, it was probably 5 years ago now, I bought a new vehicle. I went into the dealership with my husband, explained to the salesperson, I am looking for a car. I am paying for the car. This is my business vehicle. I need something lovely and reliable. So we took it for a test drive. He talked to me all about, the car and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. My husband sat in the back seat, didn't talk to him. We got back to the dealership. And he said, okay, Jack, let's talk financing. He referred to my husband.
Wow.
This is in, 2020.
Yeah.
It was probably 2019. I'm good enough to drive this car, but I'm not good enough to pay for it.
Wow.
So very, very frustrating that still happens. And so I'm a white woman. So I can't even imagine some of the stereotypes that intersecting identities go through. That's something that I'm still dealing with in most recent times.
Yeah. Wow. That's That's a pretty revealing story to tell, that's for sure. Thanks for reframing that question, by the way. It's so important. I've just learned something from that. Like, it's not women's job to fix these biases and resolve these obstacles. It's everyone's job. It's society's job. And I think that's an important shift in perspective that so many people, particularly men, perhaps need to make. So thanks for that.
Well, thanks for accepting that.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a bit. And when I introduced you, I mentioned your involvement in the development of a girls' leadership program. Can you tell us about that program and talk about what you think are the key principles of leadership that girls should learn about in order to become leaders?
Yeah, Gordon, that was such an impactful and special time in my life. We taught the Girls Leadership Program for, I think it was about 5 years through the Famous Five Foundation that I was a part of. And our focus for that program was working with girls who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to attend a workshop like that. So we partnered with not-for-profits like the Boys and Girls Club of Calgary, Young Women of Power, really to ensure that we were reaching girls from a diverse background. And the overall goal was to create a space where they could learn about leadership, character, and overall the importance that their voice can have in making change. So a key part of the program was teaching the girls about character. And at that time, we talked about character isn't just something that you're born with, it's how you choose to act. It's not the kind of person you are today, but the kind of person you decide to be or you can be. So it's really, instilling in them that confidence that character is something that can be actively, improved or built. And the traits really that make us wonderful about ourselves. So in these workshops, we focused on 5 characteristics, being adventurous, ambitious, courageous, curious, and ingenious. And today, I would add the importance of empathy into that conversation. But back then, we focused on those characteristics and how they were essential for implementing change, making a difference, and overall accomplishing great things. And so throughout the workshops, we helped the girls reflect on the qualities, what they meant. And by the end, we had them create action plans for how they thought they could implement change in their communities. These sessions, they're so amazing. I really miss doing this, but they were structured not only to help them realize, their own leadership qualities, but also inspire them to take tangible steps towards creating change and working with other girls to, understand that they didn't have to do it alone. We all have different strengths, and if we blend together, we can really do great things. And so at the end of it, the action plan that we saw ranged from how to stop a bully in my school, how to implement a recycling program at my school, and the best one I think was how to extend recess in their school. So it was so amazing just to watch these young women really come to their own throughout the workshop. It was only a day. I remember one particular young woman up at the Boys and Girls Club in Northeast Calgary, and when she came in, the facilitator told us that she was on the autism spectrum, but she was quite communicative and just needed some time to warm up. And when she came in, she had a deflated balloon. And throughout the morning, she would blow it up and let the air out, blow it up and let the air out. And then around lunchtime, it was fully inflated and she had tied it up and she was holding onto it. And by the middle of the afternoon, she literally let go of this balloon. She just tapped it away and she came into the conversation. And it was just so, I get emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it was just it was just impactful to watch something as simple as a conversation and just having, a group around you to really talk about some of the things that you might not otherwise be able to talk about.
Well, it sounds like an incredible program, both for the girls and young women who had the good fortune to be able to participate, but valuable to you as well as a grown-up and being able to learn from these girls as well. So that's a great program. Is that still happening, or has it ceased, or?
It has ceased, but I know there's other wonderful programs that all around Canada that are still out there. So if anybody wants any suggestions on some programming, I'd be happy to share some.
Yeah, and those 5 cornerstones or principles that you mentioned, and then you added the 6. I'm going to go back and listen to those again because each one of them sound so relevant and important, no matter what you're going to do with your life or where you're going to take your career. So they were well chosen for sure. We're almost out of time. I wanted to end with a bit of a fun question for you. And I'm wondering, I might be able to guess the answer, but you have to tell me. If you hadn't pursued a career as a CPA and financial mentor, what do you think you might have done career-wise? What is your path not taken, Shauna?
Okay, well, I'll tell you, but I want to know what you think. Initially, I was going to say therapist, but I think I do a fair amount of that. So maybe a drummer. I have no rhythm and I can't sing, but I think it'd be really fun to learn.
Wow, a drummer. That's awesome. We could form a band. I was going to guess teacher. But drummer's pretty good too.
I do a fair bit of teaching right now, so that's good.
Yeah, so that's, it was kind of an obvious guess for me, I guess, but that's the perfect spot to wrap up our discussion, Shauna. It's been such an eye-opener for me to chat with you and hear what you have to say and learn about the important work you're doing. I'm going to take a lot away from this discussion myself, so thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. And listeners, if you want to learn more about the Finance Cafe or check out their podcast, visit thefinancecafe.ca. That's one word, the Finance Cafe, and then .ca. So thank you, Shauna, for being such a great guest.
Gordon, thank you so much for the opportunity, and hopefully I gave the audience something to ponder. And again, if anybody wants to get in touch and just chat about financial wellness or anything else, find me on LinkedIn.
That's great. Thanks, Shauna, and hopefully we'll talk again someday soon.
Thank you.
The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation to the CPA Education Foundation by the late Brian Heshe. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. We would like to acknowledge that the CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The CPA Education Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments on the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation. Thanks for listening.